Welcome back to the Arc Junkies podcast. Returning to the show today is Richard Roybal. Richard was on back in episode 244 when we talked about building a solid foundation when it comes to our finances. Let's face it, as welders, we never get access to information related to finances. There's no class on how money actually works, and that's why I brought Richard on last time. But once we start to build that solid financial foundation, how do we protect it? That's why I asked Richard to come back on the show today and talk about how to protect our assets. These are topics everyone wants to put off, and most don't want to talk about it, but think about it. Why are you at work every day, busting your ass? For most of us, it's because we're providers, or will be providers for our families. But one day, we'll leave this earth and everything on it behind. How are you going to be the provider your family needs once you're no longer here? By covering your assets. Richard and I discuss a few ways that are super simple that make sure your family is provided with everything they need once you're gone. We'll get right into the episode right after a quick word from the folks that keep this ship afloat. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by my friends at Outlaw Leather. Attention all welders, fitters, fabricators, ironworkers, and pipe welders. Are you tired of using flimsy, mass-produced gear that falls apart just after a few months? Look no further than Outlaw Leather. Their custom-made welding hoods, bolt bags, rod pouches, and more are handcrafted with the highest quality materials to ensure they stand the test of time. They understand that your gear is your livelihood, and they want to provide you with the best possible tools to do your job. Their leather goods are built to last, and they take pride in each and every piece they make. They even offer custom leather work as well. Just send your description to info@outlawleatherllc.com to place an order. And with their storefront location in Pasadena, Texas, you can even stop by and see their products in person. Not only will you be able to check out the quality of their products firsthand, but you'll also be able to talk to their experts who can help you find the right gear for you. But even if you can't make it to their storefront, you can still take advantage of their special offers just for listeners of this show. Use the code ARCJunkies at checkout on their website at outlawleather.com and save 15% off all their in-stock leather goods. Upgrade your welding gear with Outlaw Leather today. Whether you're a professional welder or a DIY enthusiast, their leather goods are perfect for anyone looking for durable, long-lasting gear. Visit outlawleather.com today and see the difference for yourself. Outlaw Leather, the best leather goods for welders, fitters, fabricators, ironworkers, and pipe welders. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Maintenance welders, are you tired of using subpar welding rods and wires that just don't cut it when it comes to heavy equipment maintenance and hard facing? Look no further than Rockmount Research and Alloys. Their rods and wires are specifically designed to withstand the rigorous demands of heavy equipment welding and maintenance welding and hard facing. Their products are of the highest quality, guaranteeing high performance and consistent results. They're specially formulated to provide the best results even in the toughest conditions. In addition to their welding rods and wires, they also offer a wide range of other products including abrasives, burrs, bits, and blades. And as a special bonus for the listeners of the Arc Junkies podcast, you can use Arc Junkies 10 at checkout on their website, rockmountwelding.com, and receive 10% off on all their abrasives, burrs, bits, blades, and welding chemicals. Take advantage of this great offer and stock up on your metalworking consumables now. Don't settle for less. Trust Rockmount Research and Alloys for all your welding and maintenance needs. Their products are trusted by professionals worldwide, and they're confident they'll exceed your expectations too. Visit their website today, rockmountwelding.com, and learn how you can get the job done right the first time, every time. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies podcast, helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Richard, welcome back, man.
Thanks for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's an honor, man. And we had last time you were on episode 244, we talked about building a solid foundation when it comes to like your finances and stuff, which I think, if you're in any industry, regardless whether it's welding or, whatever, blue collar, white collar, doesn't matter. You have to have a solid foundation. It's something that's not really taught to the general public. So I figured what better way to get it out there than to have you on the podcast, especially to educate the welders. And I got a lot of good feedback and a lot of responses from that episode. So I was like, hey, let's take it one step further. Let's start planning out our estate. So when it comes to like wills and trusts and all that other good stuff, like what are some of the things we should set up once we got our solid foundation, we're on this path to adulthood and getting our stuff together. Walk me through like what is a will, first of all.
Right. Well, first of all, a will is basically a document, right? And it's a legal document that basically allows you to transfer assets and everything to, a beneficiary without anybody, without the state basically getting involved. That's the whole purpose of it, right? But there's a few other components that we want to take care of and everything as well when establishing that. But first and foremost, let's talk about like the process of doing this stuff, right? Before
Yeah.
we jump right to like wills, because we all know that, especially if you're in adulthood, you have children, you're married, you own property. At some point or another, you've considered maybe I should set up a will. But the reason why, like even myself, like why did I put it, off to the back burner till my 30s? It's one of those things where it's like I'll get around to it. If we're really, being honest with ourselves, it's always something that we keep on the back burner. And the truth is that I believe it's like the statistics are, I think like 80% of adults in the United States don't even have any wills or anything set up, and so it's a big problem. So the first and foremost, when you're constructing an entire financial home, like I talked in the original podcast, is we want to make sure that we're starting with a solid foundation first, right? And usually when you ask people, what are their top financial goals, they're going to say, basic things, which all of us agree to. We want to buy a house. We want to build a business. We want to get out of debt, buy a car, family vacations, whatever it is, our college savings for our children, retirement, et cetera, right? And those are all sexy things when it comes to the house, right? Those are like the things that when everybody's thinking finance or building up their financial portfolio, those are all the sexy things about like money that we like. But, we always neglect the two most precious things, which first and foremost is number one, laying the foundation for the financial house in protecting your income. And why? Because all those things that we're talking about building take time, and time's never guaranteed. It's not promised. It's going to take years to accomplish, correct? So what we want to make sure is that in the time it's going to take us to achieve financial independence or accomplish our financial goals, that we protect the most precious asset we own, which is our income. That income is the most important thing, because if I die today, my 2-year-old and my 7-year-old, they can't keep a roof over their head, right? They're 100% relying on my income. So I need to make sure that my income never dies. That's always step one. Now, within that step one phase, there's a step one, and I like to call it step 1A. Okay, because it's the add-on to it's just as necessary. So we now have a foundation on a house, right? And that's protecting your income with a term life insurance policy going 10 times your annual gross income. That's proper protection. Now, once we lay that foundation, we're not going to put in a kitchen and a $30,000 kitchen and expensive furniture and TV appliances into a house that doesn't have a roof over it, correct?
Right.
Now that goes into step 1A, and that right there goes into the legal protections parts, okay? And that goes into creating 3 fundamental things. Number 1 being a will, the second thing being a living will, and the third thing being a power of attorney. Those are the 3 documents that we want to create for ourselves right away, okay? And once that part is taken care of, then we're going to go ahead and fill up the rest of the house with all the sexy stuff we like, which is emergency savings, getting out of debt, retirement, college savings for the kids, building a business, buying more property, et cetera, right? Now that we kind of understand like the frame of this house, let's go back into, the three things when it comes to legal issues, right? Number 1 is the will being, number 1. And what that means is that I want to set up a will this way. In the event when I pass, I want to make sure that all my assets, my money, and all of it is going to transfer to my beneficiary without any courts or any government getting involved in that.
Because if you don't have that set up, the government's gonna go into probate, and then your local government's gonna come in, the state government, and they're gonna say, "Oh no, you owe this. We're gonna take this. We're gonna tax this. We're gonna, we have to divide up your assets because we're in here for your best interest."
Exactly. You're letting the bureaucrats decide, what happens to your estate and everything when you pass, right? And we don't want that, right? The whole purpose of these legal documents is to get the government out of your
pockets.
Not just out of your pockets, but out of making decisions for your family. You see what I mean? Because it's one thing when you have, when someone passes, and we experience this all the time when someone passes or when someone gets sick, right, or terminally ill, is families, they become divided. You know what I mean? Everybody has an opinion. Even the person that never even came to visit the person that got sick or died, they have the opinion. They have the loudest opinion, right? And the truth is that it divides families, and that there's children involved and all that. Then the children got to see the family fighting and at odds and everything, and they don't want to have to pick and choose sides, right? So what it does, it gets the state out of your affairs, and it also gets those unwanted people that really you don't even want involved in your affairs at all. You really don't even care if they visit your funeral. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like we got those people out of it. So that has to do more with the will. Will has to do more with when you pass away, right? Now, a living will is something that most people really never heard about. But what a living will is this right here. We want to establish that document because in the event we become, let's say, terminally ill, or we're on life support, right? Anything like it has to do with medically, we'll say, right? And I'm just giving a big example. And actually, you're from Florida, so I'll give you a good example of Florida. So there was this example of a couple. He ended up getting terminally ill, and he was on life support, right? And his when you're married, you're gonna have your intimate conversations with your spouse that you're not going to share with anybody else in the family, right? Like you and your wife, you guys know about like, if I were to get sick, what are my wishes, and you guys probably have like crazy conversations. You probably even ask you questions about like, if I like, I don't know, like if I died today, how soon later could you stop breathing, and because you can't live without me type shit,
Right.
right? And so, but it's the conversations you share with your wife, like if I'm ever on life support, make sure that I'm not on life support for, more than 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever it is, right? So in Florida, there was this example of this man. He was terminally ill, and he was put on life support. Now, when he was in life support, the wife was going to pull the plug because he didn't want to be on life support. Within an internal conversation, he didn't want to be on life support for more than, I believe it was 30 or 60 days, right? So the wife was going to pull the plug, while the mother, on the other hand, lawyered up and actually kept the husband on life support. And I believe it was for 12 years.
Damn.
Okay. Now, during that 12-year period, because again, there's nothing that says that they can't do, especially if they lawyer up. So basically, that mother kept that husband alive, for 12 years, but at the same time, they have children and all of that. So the children are kind of in the middle of it and everything, and they're just waiting on a miracle. And it's at no fault to the mother. I even say this a lot of times, even like how I have mine set up, right? Like my mom, for example, we're Mexican, right? So my mom, like I have my mom is not part of that living will at all. She's part of the will, like when I die, assets and everything like that transfer with my mom. But as far as the living will part, I gave it to my sister Valerie, that responsibility. Why? Because my mother would keep me alive and decorate me for all the fucking holidays. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like she'll do that and then have everybody come visit me at the hospital and, oh, look at my mijo, look at my mijo. You know what I mean? And like that'll be my mom. And it's at no fault of hers. It's just that as a mother, she's not going to be able to let go. You know what I mean?
She
She
doesn't
won't
want
be
to
able.
make that decision.
She doesn't want to make that decision. Exactly. And she's going to stop anybody from making that decision. My sister Valerie, on the other hand, because of all the shit I talk on my social media, I get a cold and she wants to pull the plug. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So
she'd pull the plug just to like charge her iPhone.
there you go. Yeah, exactly. Just to charge her iPhone, she'll pull the plug. So I have her in charge of that because why? She's able to make that decision in the family. You know what I mean? Now, as far as the money, my sister Valerie has no business touching my money. But as far as the medical part, she's definitely in charge of that. You see what I mean? So, so the living will itself, what it does is it's a living document that says, okay, obviously you're in a coma or you're on life support, so you can't make medical decisions on your behalf because you're unconscious pretty much, right? So what the living will does is it steps in and says, with this document, no one else can make medical decisions, outside of this document. So if I'm on life support, whatever it is, this is how I'm going to make sure this is what I want done, basically. And nobody could fight that, which is good because at the end of the day, now we're not putting it in the position of our mother or someone else, like a parent or a sibling that just can't let go and doesn't want to make that decision. Now they have no way of saying, well, this is what he wanted. They have to honor the fact that, no, you wrote this down. You took the time to write this down. This is what you wanted.
Yeah,
And
sound
God,
mind and body and all that good stuff.
exactly. So So it basically makes everything a lot easier. And then lastly is going to be the power of attorney. And the power of attorney, what it is going to do is it's going to allow your spouse to, make decisions on your behalf and jump into contracts and everything. If for whatever reason you're in that state where you can't go into contracts. So go back to another example in Florida. This another husband and wife couple. The husband was in a car accident and he's ejected from the vehicle, right? Well, he gets airlifted to a hospital out in Jacksonville, and they were, about an hour away from Jacksonville, their home of residence, and he's in a coma. And the wife wanted to sell the property because the children were already grown up. They were older, they didn't live there, and the wife wanted to sell the property and just buy something closer to the hospital, so she didn't have to drive back and forth for a few hours. So she was okay. Well, we could downsize now the house and get something closer to the hospital, so I could be there for my husband. But because in Florida, she was not able to opt into in order to opt into a real estate contract, she needed both husband and wife's signature. Husband's in a coma; he can't sign.
He can't sign nothing.
Exactly. So she's locked into that. She's locked now into that house. She can't do anything with it. She can't even pull equity from the property. You see, so we want to make sure that we have a power of attorney. So this way we're giving our spouse the ability to opt into those contracts if we're in that state if we're in that state of mind. Now the biggest objection to that is, well, if I'm in a coma, then she can do whatever she wants. Well, that's why you got to choose your partner wisely before you start setting this up, because you don't want to be in a coma and then your wife, clears the accounts and everything.
Yeah, you made that bed, you got to sleep in it.
Yeah, you see what I mean? So you got to choose your wife, like wisely and everything. But at the end of the day, these are the things that you want to, in terms of legal matters, you want to have those things structured. Now, what I found out, and this is what, I started offering now, and it's funny because I've been doing this, before I became a financial advisor. I use their services for years, and it's through a Legal Shield, right? And what Legal Shield is, it's actually legal insurance, right? And I love this product because I bought it when I had the barbershops and everything, and then I became a financial advisor, and then I started implementing it now just recently into like the actual game plan. Because to set up a will and a living will and a power of attorney and all these things in trust and all that stuff, it costs thousands of dollars, to get these things going. Attorneys are expensive, and it's you don't want to beat up an attorney. That's his rate. You know what I mean? Like that's their rates. So what legal insurance does is what it does is it actually gives you a law firm that represents you in any facet of law. That's a good thing. Okay. So in any matter that you need with law, there's going to be a law firm that is assigned to you, and they're all local. You could actually visit the law firms. They're all within your county, right? Now, once you have that, they're going to provide all the legal documentation like your will, your living will, your power of attorney, all the things that you need to make sure that your legal matters are met in terms of your house and everything, all your assets, all that stuff is protected. It's all protected under that insurance policy. Now, whenever you do need an attorney for whatever reason, or you need to know your rights or anything, you have the ability to, because of that insurance, you can call your law firm, and they actually take care of all the hours and everything that it costs to contact an attorney to get consultations or legal advice. Because for the most part, you don't really need an attorney to do everything for you. A lot of it is just knowing your rights and then them reviewing documents, and you're pretty much doing it for you, unless you need an attorney to appear in court, right? And so that's what I always recommend, is that rather than spending thousands of dollars out of pocket, just get legal insurance, and it costs $28 a month. And that right there is worth more than just like an hour consultation.
Yeah.
That's
and then it's kind of like putting an attorney on retainer, but you're doing it at a like heavily discounted rate.
There you go, basically. And you actually have a law firm that represents you. So, for example, like you get a speeding ticket, you don't have to worry about arguing with law officers or anything. Just give me the ticket and everything. Send that ticket over to your law firm and let them deal with it. You see what I mean? Like, I'd rather it be, like me, rather than me fighting the system on my own, I'd rather it be me and my attorneys fighting the system. You get an IRS audit, send that letter over to your attorneys, let them deal with it. You see, and that's what it is. You actually have now a law firm that represents you. So now it's, let me call my attorney now. Let me call my attorney. And a lot of people, we don't know that that's available to us, right? Because
I had no idea until you just mentioned that.
Yeah, it's legal insurance, and that's why we partnered with Legal Shield now. And it's so cool because like even on the app, they could actually when they download the app and everything, and you go onto the screen on the second tab, it says will questionnaire, and you could actually set up your will and everything right there, and then you hit submit, and it forwards it right to your attorney. And then if you ever have a ticket or anything because of the app, you could actually scan the ticket and hit submit, and it sends it right to your attorneys.
Damn,
It's actually
that's
the
pretty
easiest.
slick.
It's the easiest thing ever. Even when you're buying a car, whatever it is, anything that requires your signature, you can take a picture of it, send it over, and then within 24 hours, usually it's less than 24 hours, the law firm always gets a hold of you and they say, hey, we just reviewed it. Everything looks good. Or, hey, have them remove this. One of my buddies out in Florida too, as well, he's in Miami. He was giving a speech about this, and he was saying that when he was buying his house, him and his wife were buying another house, and he sent over the real estate agreement to the purchasing agreement to the attorneys, and they came back and they said, hey, have all this stuff removed right here, like we want this removed, and they actually saved them on $11,000 worth of closing costs on the property. And they're like, our attorney said that either have this stuff removed or they'll actually remove it for them, and they'll actually close out these sections right here. They'll do it on their end, and they'll do it at a fraction of the cost.
Dang,
You see, and so
that's
they're
worth
like,
$28 a month.
it's definitely. And the best part is that if you ever need an attorney to appear for you in court, then that's where basically the insurance kicks in, because what they do is they cover a portion of the costs. Like, let's say attorney says it's going to cost $5,000 to get me in court, right? Well, then they cover half the cost of that and say, okay, well, we'll cover 2,500. You pay the other 2,500 to the attorney. You see, and so it's always one of the best tools to actually have out there. And it's crazy because I've had it for years, and I was like, as I'm talking about wills and everything, I was like, you know what? It's probably better if we just start incorporating this into the services now.
Yeah,
you know?
no, for
Mhm.
sure. So when it comes to a power of attorney, that's a pretty powerful document. Let's do a deep dive into that, because I remember before I deployed to Kuwait, and then before I deployed to Iraq, I filled
You
out
got to set up a power of attorney.
I set up a general power of attorney for my wife, which I trusted, like, wholeheartedly. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but you got to be careful when you set up a power of attorney, because I guess there's like three different types you can set up. You also want to make sure that you put like an expiration date on it. So I had mine.
Yeah.
I set mine up for like 1 year. That way, by the time I come back, I could just go ahead and delete it. It's done, and then like I'm acting on my own behalf now.
Yep. Absolutely. And when you're setting those up now, remember, I'm not an attorney, so I'm just giving general
Yeah,
information. That's it. I'm not giving
just
like legal.
introductory, like let people know what it
Yeah.
is.
Right. And so this is just my understanding of because remember, I'm not the one that creates the power of attorney. I just take the questionnaire and then send it to the insurance company, and the attorneys do all that,
Yeah.
But from my understanding with the trust, yes, there's different ways where you could set up certain trusts. So like for example, when we left to Iraq, right? That was it was a limited power of attorney, right? So my grandfather wasn't, because I didn't have children or anything my first time I deployed, right? And so I had a general power of attorney, and I basically had it to where my grandfather took care of all my affairs here at home, and he was the one that was in charge of that. So he had access to my bank accounts, everything, with that. But yes, there was like the expiration date was set up like from when I was expected to return, and so I think I did back then. Shit, that was when the army we deployed for 15, 18 months.
Yeah.
That was back in my day.
Back in my
So
day, yeah.
yeah, so 15 months, and so I set it up for 15 months. And so you have the general ones, are the limited ones, and every power of attorney when you set up, it's going to have, like, even in the questionnaire and everything too, it's going to ask you questions like, time frames. Do you want to have a full power of attorney where basically, regardless if you're, in a coma or anything like that, at any point they could just opt into a contract. That's like total trust with your spouse. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so you could have a full power of attorney. Limited ones is usually what most people go for, because that just means that rather than giving them like the full authority to do everything for you, you're limiting their power to do certain things. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's got to be like very specific. Like they can purchase a car in my name, or they can pay these bills,
yeah.
or they have access to like this account.
Right. You see what I mean? And that's the limited part of it, is that, you're like, let's say if like for example, like if I have a wife, right? Obviously I'm not going to say she has the ability to, open up credit cards and things like that in my name. We don't want that, you know what I mean? So obviously those are things that you would put into that into the power of attorney, or what are the limitations of this, And so that's but again though, that has to do with I always say this, like I give out a whole brochure, right? And I'll actually email it to you so you can overlook it too. And it's pretty cool because it talks about the stages of your life and everything, right? And obviously, the most important thing that you could do, and it's so funny, man. I feel like the more I'm in finance and the more I'm learning this, and I'm starting to understand why a lot of wealthy people always say, choose your partner. The most important financial decision you can make is choosing your partner wisely. you,
Yeah.
you know and because like a lot of this stuff, when you're looking at a lot of the legal things and all the things that you're doing in terms of building your assets and everything, and all this has to do with protecting your ass in the event that something catastrophic happens. You really have to make sure that the person that you're laying next to, you could without a doubt trust with your entire life. You know what I mean? Because this stuff, it can make or break you. You know what I mean? And God forbid something happens, prematurely. And so it was before all of that. I think like the best thing is, choosing your spouse wisely, because you are giving them, the ability to make financial decisions. God forbid something happens to you, And I know the biggest objection to that is, oh, do I really trust my spouse? You know what I mean? It's I'm not a marriage counselor or anything
Yeah.
like that. Just a financial guy. So I'm assuming if
Probably
you've
better
married
off
her,
that way.
yeah, I'm assuming if you married her, then you have to trust her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you might want
Yeah.
to know her for a while, or him, before before you go signing a general power of attorney, because that document essentially makes somebody else you. Like they can
Hmm.
buy a house in your name, they can set up credit cards. I mean, they're you with that
Yeah.
document.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they're important to have. Like I said, if you're in a good relationship and you trust your spouse, like, and a lot of my clients, I mean, they're good, they're in great relationships, you know what I mean? Like they're like, yeah, like my wife is, like my best friend, my wife knows everything. My wife is, yeah, and like they sit the wife like right there and then like, so in the majority of cases, people understand that. There's rare cases where it's like, oh, I don't want to give my wife that much power and stuff. But again, that's why you have limits on it. You could put limits on those things
Yeah.
just in case. Yeah.
So now
Yep.
with the living will, is that just pull the plug or leave it plugged in, or is there
Yeah,
more
that
to
has
it?
there's a little bit more to it, like but for the most part it has to do more with what are your medical wishes. You know what I mean? Like you're alive, you can't speak on your behalf, and so what would you want done to you in with your body and all of that stuff, you see? So that's what the living will is. The other thing is with the will too, it has a lot more to do with not just assets, but it also has to do with what happens to our children. God forbid something happens to both me and my wife. Who's in charge of that affair, right? Because let's say both of you two pass away, those children are immediately going to go into the system, right? And then the family has to fight to get those children out of the system, depending on your state. Like if you're in California, good luck. You know what I mean? They'll keep them in the system for a long time. New York is another state where the system itself, it's a slow process. You know what I mean? So we want to make sure that, God forbid, me and my wife, we pass away. Well, then whoever we designated as the sole provider to our children, they're able to now take the children. They have the legal document, so that way Child Protective Services, they can't come and say nope, they're now property of the state until we find a legal guardian. No, they're not property of the state. They stay with the family, or they stay with whoever we designated as the legal caretaker for them, you see. And so that's another thing. And these are questions, like I said, we don't want to ask these questions. I know look, we're talking about finance, and a lot of people think like, man, get to the money part. You know what I mean? Let's build some assets, like teach us how to build a business and all of this stuff. I understand that's the sexy shit. None of this stuff is sexy here. This is a part that nobody likes to talk about, but it's the most important, because at the end of the day, we're all going to die.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of if, but when we die. So we have to prepare for these things, you see, because what's going to happen is that we could build all these great things and do all these amazing things when it comes to our finances. And you could be doing everything the right way, but God forbid, when we die, if we don't have these things taken care of, we're leaving it up to the state to decide it.
It's all
And it's
gone.
like,
And they're not the
exactly.
best financial stewards of, like, hell,
Fuck
tax
no.
dollars.
Bro, it's like putting the DMV in charge of your affairs when you die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Putting the
Like,
fox in the hen house.
yeah, exactly. And what are they going to do? They're going to take their fair share. It's like a mafia. They're going to pull whatever they can. You see, and we don't want that to happen, and so these are not comfortable conversations, they're not sexy or anything like that, but they're important conversations to have, especially if we have children involved, we're married, and we have assets involved as well. And assets is not just in terms of property, but if you have your investment accounts, your 401ks, all of that stuff, this is money that you've built over time. It belongs to your family. Let that money transfer over. Don't give it to the government, and don't let the government decide what's going to happen to your affairs or anything. You decide all that stuff. It's your body. It's your assets. It's your body. It's your family. So you decide that stuff.
Exactly.
That's the whole purpose of this. It's basically what I'm saying is this, right? Like, like I said, and I love the whole analogy of a house. Like when you're building a house, there's nothing sexy about life insurance. Like no one ever, I think I'm probably the only person that gets turned on with my life insurance policy. You know what I mean? Like, even like the girl I'm dating right now, I know that the sexiest thing about me is my life insurance policy. And I tell her that she's like, you're stupid, but I'm the only person that probably thinks that having a life insurance policy is sexy, right? But you ask most people about life insurance, like, well, I don't need fucking life insurance. Like, no one really thinks about it, right? It's the foundation of what we do because, like I said, if as we're building our property, let's say if we say, well, I want to get out of debt. Okay, it'll take us 5 years to get out of debt. Within that 5 year period, could we pass away? Yeah, it's a possibility. If I die, that debt transfers to my spouse, and if she's a stay-home mom or she doesn't make as much money in order to take care of the debt with just her income alone, she's screwed financially. That whole family's screwed. You see, so not only did you not leave any money behind, but you transferred debt, and now we have to find a way to bury your ass. So now we got more debt. You see, so there's nothing sexy about it, but it's responsibility. The will, the living will, the power of attorney. There's nothing sexy about it, but again, though, it's responsibility. So it's like when you're buying a house, right? You're looking in your house shopping, and you have the realtor. They're not going to go and walk you into a house and say like they're going to walk you in the house. They're going to show you the kitchen. They're going to show you the bedrooms. They're going to show you all the backyard, all the great things, the sexy stuff about the house. You're not going to have a realtor that's going to say, like, hey, let's, like put on this coat. We're going to go underneath the fucking house real quick and crawl in the dirt. So you could actually we're going to inspect the foundation. I'm going to show you right now. I know the kitchen looks nice, but fuck that kitchen. We're going to go down under the dirt. And I'm going to show you the foundation, and it's solid, no cracks, right? And then after this, we're going to jump on the ladder. I'm going to take you to the roof, and I'm going to show you there's no cracks or any leaks in the roof. They're not going to do that. They're going to show you all the sexy things, like the kitchen and everything like that. Just like when it comes to money, we're more attracted to growing our assets, investments, and businesses. But the most important part of a house is the foundation and the roof. Any of those things break, and guess what? It doesn't matter what we have in the house; it's all ruined.
Yeah, all your assets are gone at that point.
Exactly. It's all gone. See? And so that's what we want to protect. And that's what we're creating. I love the analogy of a house. So yes, life insurance isn't sexy. Legal protection, all that, none of it's sexy, but it's necessary. It's part of the process. Once we have those things set up, then shit, we could, you're just sprint now. Sprint to the finish line. You have all these things taken care of, sprint to the finish line and knock out the rest of your financial home. And it costs really nothing. Like I said, $28 a month is nothing to set up that legal protection. $11 more and you get identity theft protection. There you go.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. Are you in need of a new fabrication table? Look no further than Strong Hand Tools. Right now, you can get 10% off their fabrication tables and 5% off all their 5/8 tool packs when you visit stronghandtools.com/promo. Strong Hand Tools offer high-quality, durable, and versatile products that will help you increase your productivity and improve your work quality. Don't miss out on this limited offer. Visit stronghandtools.com/promo now and get your hands on the best tools in the market. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders. They just released the new Typhoon 230. The Typhoon 230 is the newest addition to the Everlast line of welders and is packed with features that will take your welding game to the next level. This multi-process welder is capable of stick and TIG, both AC and DC, making it perfect for any job. With its advanced inverter technology, the Typhoon 230 is a powerful, efficient, and easy-to-use machine, even for beginners. It's also lightweight and portable, making it perfect for on-the-go welding jobs. Get yours today at everlastwelders.com and be sure to use Arc Junkies in the comment section at checkout to get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. Everlast Welders. Weld mean, weld green. Now let's get back to the show. Yeah, we just set that up now because my father-in-law, he got his identity. Well, somebody was in the process of stealing his identity, but my mother-in-law had this, I think it's called Aura. And so like all her passwords, like everything's protected. And as soon as something fraudulent goes on, she gets an email and like they're on it. But I mean, it's
Absolutely.
peace of mind. Like you think about it, you work hard and you build up all your assets. You got your house, you got your car, you got all your financials together, and then
Mhm.
somebody can just swoop in and take it if things are left unprotected. Same thing,
Yeah.
if you die, you don't have a will set up, it gets put in probate, and then the state fights, and designates who gets what out of what you own, what you worked your entire life for, what you've
Yeah.
tried to provide your family with after you're
Mhm.
gone.
Yeah,
So I mean, it,
absolutely.
it makes sense. And like, I did the same thing because I just turned 40 back in August. It's like, yeah, I'll get a will together. Yeah, I'll get one together. It's like, it's taken forever to do the process. But finally, like, I'm setting up a will. I'm setting up a trust. I got my life insurance. Like, I'm getting my shit together. I mean, it's
Yeah,
taken me a long
exactly.
time to do it, but it's like you said, it's not sexy. It's not something that's really on the front burner. You always push it back. You're like, yeah, I'll take care of that later. And,
Yeah.
like you said, 80% of Americans, that blows my mind. How many of those people, when they die, like, now everything's left up to the state to take care of. You lose
Yep.
you lose your kids, you lose your finances, your house is gone, car, everything, and you're in a box. I mean, you're not worried about it anymore, but your family's left to deal with all the fallout.
Yeah, and actually, here's the good thing too, because a lot of people, they say, "Well, I own a house, but it's mortgaged, right?" No, 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 no. You don't own the house yet. The bank owns the house. You see what I mean? God forbid you pass away. This is why probate real estate is such a big industry. Like the banks and everything, they love when people die, their clients die, because this is how my grandfather lost his house. Same thing when he worked all his life, bought the house, and he worked all his life trying to pay it off. He fell short of it. He died before he paid it off, and immediately after, the banks they took the property, and the reason why they say you have 30 days to give us all our money. Well, good luck trying to get a mortgage in 30 days. It's like it's almost impossible. And so a lot of times when someone passes and there's no, like there's no spouse or anything at all, it's just like the children and the grandchildren. Banks don't have to give them the property. They can say, sorry, our client's dead, it's our property. Like there's nobody else. Like if you want it, you could pay off the loan, but we want our money in 30 days. And the reason why they say that is because they got all those years of interest and payments, and they made their money plus more. And now all they're going to do is take that money, and they're gonna take the property, and then they're going to sell it off at a just to get rid of it that week. They'll sell it off to some real estate investor that's in their market, in their network, that buys it out. Let's say at 80% or 70% of the cost. You know what I mean? They buy it, they paint it up and fix it up, and then they just resell it again. But the bank makes money on top of that. So they make money off of reselling it. And if that real estate developer got connected with that bank, then that real estate developer is probably going to get the actual loan from the bank to basically put another 30-year mortgage on it. So they're making money like crazy off of this stuff. So they want you to fail. They want you to not have these things set up, because the chances are, by not teaching you these things, remember, if 80% of people are not set up this way, that means only 20% are succeeding. If they have the ability to do these things, only 20% of those people are going to succeed, and making sure that money transfers to the next generation. The other 80%, they're pretty much screwed. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all their stuff is going to go back to the bank, and people say, well, I don't really care. What do I care when I'm dead? What do I care when I'm dead? Well, even if you said, I don't really care, like my kids, I don't want to leave them with anything or whatever. Well, when you die, that stuff doesn't just disappear. Even if you hated your family, you hated your wife, you hated your kids or whatever, I would still rather my assets go with my bloodline and my wife than the banks.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because I don't know these people for shit. I don't know none of them. I don't know anybody at Bank of America. I don't know anybody at these banks. So I don't want any of my assets going to the system. You see what I mean? That's the banking system, the government system. It's all those systems. I don't want none of my money, my assets, anything that I've worked for. It's going to stay with my bloodline, whether I have children or not. You
Right.
see what I mean? It's gonna, whatever I build will stay within my bloodline. It's not gonna go anywhere, even if I leave it to a sibling. You know what I mean? I'm gonna make sure that it goes to somebody I know.
Right. So
Mhm.
now what if, like, I've got my house. My house is in my name and my wife's name. So if I die, does it automatically defer to her just because
It
she's like
should.
the co-applicant on the loan?
It should, but again, I don't know Florida state law though, so that's the thing. Now, when I do pass my exam on the 25th for the mortgages and everything, and then I transfer it over to Florida, then I can give you a concrete answer on that.
Okay.
But
Yeah, I was
off the
just
top of
wondering
my
if,
head, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
because like I'm in the process of setting up a will, but like if I fell short, because I waited so long, if something, God forbid,
Oh,
were to happen, Like I
Huh.
just want to make sure that she's good. I mean, obviously I got my life insurance policy, so that'll kick in, and she's the beneficiary. She'll be able to just pay the house off, and
Yeah, she could
yeah,
pay the house off with that. Yeah, and then plus your income's replaced too.
yeah.
You see what I mean?
So
So
now
she,
what else can we put inside of our will other than just like the house? I mean, like
you can put
how
anything
far
in there.
into like the minutia can we go?
You can put anything in there. You could put remember, well, the things that it's going to ask you is number one, all your properties. You're going to list all your properties, any of your accounts that you have set up, whether it be banking accounts, investment accounts, individual stocks, basically everything that you own, like everything that's in your name and everything that you've touched, that should all go into there, and you should inventory all of it. And what's cool about this is that inventorying your will and setting it up, it's one of those things where you're going to start identifying like, holy crap, I have all of this other stuff that I totally forgot. Like, I have another 401k sitting with another company. I didn't even think about, and it's like, it's only $5,000, but that's $5,000 I didn't even know I had. You know what I mean? I'm going to roll that over into my traditional IRA, get that money growing again. You know what I mean? I have money sitting, like I just pulled 5,500 from my TSP from the military. I totally freaking forgot about that. You know what I mean? And I just like, pulled that over, and I was like, this is freaking awesome. You know what I mean? Like, but it comes back to, the estate planning. You never know, as you're going through the questionnaire and everything, you never know what you might have forgot, and so you want to list up all your assets, everything that you own, all of that stuff, and then, delegate that stuff, because like I said, if you don't delegate it, the state will just take it. You know what I mean? And I'm not giving the government any more money, bro. I see what they spend it on.
Yeah,
I'm not giving them any more of my money, man.
I don't blame you there. Yeah, they take too much of it as it is. So
Yeah.
what would be like the appropriate age to set up a will? Like how
Oh, 18 years old. 18
18?
years old. 18 years old. Just get it set up. If you're not under if like your parents. Now, here's the cool thing, right? With that legal protection program, right? Your children are protected under that program too, which is good. I believe they're on there till like age 25. I believe that's how long they could stay on there. And 25, they can start up their own, just like any other insurances and all that. I think it's always like to the age of 25, then they have to set up their own. But if let's say their parents are not, they're the ones like for example, in mine, like my dad, for example, he never set anything up financially for any of us. He was like, he was not the responsible parent. You know what I mean? So when it came to all these things, I had to be the one to set those things up on my own. You know what I mean? Like I had to be the one to do all these things on my own. And what sucks, I had a trial and error. I had to learn everything, through trial and error. How did I get into finance? Was I got ripped off in finance, but through life insurance. You know what I mean? I know how this stuff worked. So if you're 18 years old and your parents are not, like financially savvy or anything, I would definitely just start setting up everything all on your own. Especially because you're 18, it's super cheap to do everything for yourselves. You know what I mean? Even like, I just set up an investment account for an 18-year-old like 2 days ago, right? And his whole financial plan, he's like, I can only put away $100 a month. Like that's he's 18. Like he ain't making, adult money. So he's 18 years old. So we have him putting away $100 a month, right? We set up well, it's actually $120 because we put $20 towards the life insurance policy, and then we started, building up the rest of it, right? But even saving $100 into his IRA, he's still in 49 years. Let's say he goes all the way to the age of 67. He's still at, what was it? I think it was like 7.1 million or something like that. So because he's so young, he could put in like a little bit of money into the account and end up with so much. Whereas if we start later in our life, we have to put more money in.
Yeah,
And
you got to start front load it pretty heavy.
Exactly. You see, so for him, like when you're 18, go ahead and start all this stuff for you, because literally you could start with a small amount, and that over time is going to mean it's going to make so much money for you in the long run. You're not going to see it at the beginning because he's saving only $100 a month. So that's 100, maybe at the end of the year, he'll have $1,500, $2,000. You know what I mean? Like my nephew, he did the same thing. He was saving he's saving a couple $100 a month. And he calls me and goes, hey, he goes, I want to, cancel out my investments. And I was like, why? He goes, I don't know. I just want to cancel it. And I was like, well, let's open up the account. I was like, dude, you have $3,800 in here. He goes, I have $3,800. And I was like, yeah, man, like what, you don't read your statements? And he goes, nah, man, I just throw them away. And I was like, okay, well, do you want to cancel? He goes, no, keep it going. Keep it going. Now he just keeps it going. Now he calls me when he has extra money to put into it. You see what I mean? And so when they're young, they're not going to see big strides because they're putting in a little bit of money. But over the long run, watch 10 years from now, and he looks, damn, I only put in like about, $10,000 into this over 10 years. And I have like 140,000, you know what I mean? Or I have 100 and some thousand, and they just keep growing and growing from there. You see what I mean? So it's, at the beginning, they're not going to see it, but in the long run, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's going to be like, dude, like I have a buttload of money. And how much did you put into it? Nothing. I really didn't put anything into it. Like I was just, I just stayed consistent. And that's what I'd say for anything when it comes to anything financially, as soon as you're 18 years old, I recommend just start doing it right away, because you could start with a small amount and you could just get everything in order. And then not only that, by getting into the habit of saving money every single month consistently, and it just becomes part of your routine, when you start hitting like us, we figured this out in 30.
Yeah.
At 30. Imagine where we'd be at 12 years ago. If we started 12 years ago, where we'd be at today. You see what I mean? I'm excited for my 40s because of what I set up in my 30s.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? If we started at 18 in our 20s, imagine where we'd be at in our 30s. You know what I mean? And I'm like, damn. And I
Huge
used to, and I remember I bought my first house, right? My first house, I bought it when I was 22 years old, right? Had I known what I know now, what I knew then, my house would have already been paid off. Like I would have no mortgage. I would have no nothing. I would just be making money. Like I would be like retarded rich. Like it would be stupid right now. I'd be probably like the next Robert Kiyosaki. It would be like the most amazing thing ever. But I trial and error. What am I doing? I'm trying to keep up with the Joneses. As my income went up, my debt went up, and I was just like, and then I'm in my 30s, and I'm like, okay, I got to figure this stuff out now. Like I've kind of really screwed things up. But I think I was 28 when I figured out like when I need to fix this now, And so now we're in our 30s and we're looking forward to our 40s,
Yeah. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this podcast, because like nobody else is talking about this stuff. I mean, like if you go to college, you might get a couple entry level classes into some of this stuff like finances and things like that. But like nobody's really teaching that. They don't teach it in school. They don't teach money management in school. They don't, talk about wills or trusts or any of that stuff. So where are people going to get the information? And like you said, like there's only 20% of Americans that really have their shit together and have all this stuff actually set up, whether it's, retirement or, a will, if they die, like everything's taken care of, it's got a nice, pretty little bow on it. Everything's, it's handled, done. And I think that, that's just part of being an adult, being, responsible with everything that you own is planning out, like God forbid something happens to me. Where's all this stuff going to go?
Yeah, exactly. And the good thing is like I said, you're starting it young, man, you're already inventory. What's cool about this, right? Like I said, we're 30 figuring it out. We're backtracking on things that we've created in the past. You're 18, you're barely starting. You're going to have inventory because it's part of your habit. You're going to have inventory of all your money for the rest of your adult life. Like that's the best part, is that you're not going to have to worry about, did I leave money here? Did I leave money there? You're already on track. So the sooner the better. You know what I mean? That's always the best advice. When do I start this? Yesterday. Yeah. Yesterday would have been the best time.
That's my kid's 13 and I got a 10-year-old, and I'm trying to explain a lot of this to them now. Like, hey, start up. I want to get my son a bank account because he's getting ready to, enter the workforce. I think at the age of 14, he's allowed to work down here in the in the state of Florida. He's allowed to work at, certain entities. So, I mean, he can get into the fast food area or, whatever. But
That's
awesome. He's wanting to get a job. And
it kind of feels like you're in America again in Florida. Huh?
I know, right? It's kind of great. You should come on out here, man. But
I know I want to, man. I love Florida. It's like one of my favorite states, bro.
It's not bad. It's pretty nice. Come on out. There's plenty of room.
Every time I go to Florida, it's funny because I always get picked up at the airport and I have the cab driver or whoever is taking me, right? And they go, "Where are you from?" I go, "California." And they go, "Oh," and they're like, "Are you moving out here?" And I go, "No, I'm just like visiting, right?" And then and I go, "I love coming to Florida because it always feels like I'm back in America, And they're like, "Oh yeah. Here you're in America. Here, like California's not America. Florida, you're in America again."
Yeah. No, it's nice, but like, so that's what I'm trying to set up for my kid is, like I want to get a bank account set up so he can have like a savings account, a bank account, and then he can start handling and managing his finances. Because like I didn't have that when I was a kid. I think I set up my first bank account. Like I had to get my mom's permission. I was 18. I had already been working for I started working at like age 15, restaurants and just making money just to have money to buy I had to buy my first car and everything like that. But I was still like really crappy with money. Like money comes in, money goes right back out. And then it's like I'm waiting
Right.
for payday again because I want nice things. And that's like my grandfather always said that. It's the American way. You buy shit you don't need with money you don't have to impress people you don't like. And like
Yeah.
it never really hit me until like I got older. Like I understood it, but I was like, yeah, like I want a nice truck. I was, so I go out and buy a truck. You just get deeper
Mhm.
and deeper in debt. But like I think having access to learning how finances work, that's kind of what I wanted to provide with this episode is to teach people, put that information out there and say, hey, set this up, get your life insurance in order, especially if you're at a younger age, the policy is a lot cheaper and you're going to rack up a lot more money a lot faster.
Yeah.
Same thing. Get your will taken care of. That way, God forbid something happens to you, it's already taken care of. You can, set up specific beneficiaries. You can pay certain things off, so you're not leaving your family with a mountain of debt.
Yeah.
You're leaving them with all the assets, and you're allowing them to pay off any of your bad debt. And like they're gonna make out a little bit better without you, and it's gonna kind of help offset the fact that they're losing you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like I always say this, like if you're gonna cry, right? Because like when someone dies, it's a grieving process, right? And I said this, like if I'm gonna cry, I'd rather cry in a Lamborghini. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
I'd rather cry in a Lamborghini.
Like, oh damn, he's dead. Oh shit, we just inherited $300,000 in debt.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not good.
Yeah, you don't want that set up. So what are some of the
Yeah.
other things that like as far as like the will, you said you had a questionnaire or whatever. What are some of the other things we want to consider when we're setting up a will?
Yeah, let me go ahead and open this up, right? And actually I have it right here. So some of the things, right? Like one, listing your children, right? And here's another thing, right? One of the things it's gonna ask you is stuff like that has to do with biological children, okay? And then here's another thing, right? Is because there's a lot of clients that I have, especially nowadays, it's very common that people have blended families, where they're married and they come with children from other relationships, but the new relationship, they treat them just like their own children, like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? And so when you're dividing your assets, a lot of times when you pass away, and let's say your wife had a child from another relationship, and you raise that child like your own, that's your child. It may not biologically be your child, but that is your child. Well, a lot of times when you pass and you divide the assets up amongst your children, because it's not your biological child, they might not be recognized under the law, whether or not that's your biological child. So there's a question here that says, if you have stepchildren, do you want them treated as a natural born or legally adopted child in your will? You see, that's huge right there, because you don't want it to where the other child that you've raised your entire life, and that's your child, and then next thing you know, you pass, and then that child, because of the law, the way that it's written, they're basically neglected. You see, you don't want that to happen. So that's another thing to take into consideration as well. Other things are any of your children or other beneficiaries mentally or physically disabled, right? So let's say you have minor children that have certain disabilities. Okay, you pass away, who takes care of those things? You see what I mean? Who's the provider? Who's all? There's so many, like just in that section alone, the attorneys are going to go into more detail with that. You see, and so, but you want to let them know, like, yes, if they're on any SSI benefits or anything like that, who takes care of that? Because you're gone, they're a minor. You see, they're in the system now.
Yeah, who's gonna handle
We're,
that
we're
business?
Exactly. So you have to make sure that you list this stuff and you give it to the attorneys. This way they know, okay, we're gonna now, based off of the questionnaires, they're gonna go into more detail with certain things. Like, okay, let's talk about the SSI benefits and everything, and then they're gonna communicate with SSI and whoever the beneficiary, the new legal guardian of that child. They're gonna communicate and make sure that everything transfers to that new legal guardian. So that way they don't have to, because remember, you die, they inherit a child, plus a child with a disability who has to deal now with SSI and all. They never done this before. So now you're dying and you're leaving that responsibility to the person to take care of the child, but they don't know what you know about the system. So the attorneys will take care of all that, for you. So that's another thing to take into consideration. If your children under the age of 18, state the following person you wish to act as the guardian or the custodian in the event of your death, in case the joint death of you and your spouse. You see, so again, who would that person be? Now, this we could talk about a little bit. Don't just list somebody's name on there and just say, like, I'm gonna put my sister and that's it. Have a conversation with them to make sure that they want that. You know what I mean?
Let them know.
Make sure, and
Surprise.
this is Yeah, like, hey, surprise, you got a kid. They named you as beneficiary or as a legal guardian, you don't want that to happen. One of the things that I'm getting a lot better at now, and I'm actually going back into my client list to do this now, is really, really building relationships with the beneficiaries and everything, especially when we're talking about stuff like this when it comes to like the legal matters and all of that. Like let's say, like for example, my sister is the one that's in charge of my living will, right? So with her, let's say if I'm like the agent who wrote myself up, I want to make sure that I actually introduce myself to Valerie. You know what I mean? I want to make sure I introduce myself to her because I want to make sure that God forbid something happens to my client, she has a relationship with me. You know what I mean? And I'm the one who set all these things up. And so that's the thing I got to get, I got to go back and start doing as I'm evolving in this. But we want to make sure that we communicate that with the person that's in charge of those things. And that's I said, like, I think in the working class where we fail at because we've been taught to shut up about money. You know what I mean? Like it's like shut up and colored. Like we don't talk about money because nobody has money. So like when it comes to these matters, it's like a taboo to talk about. I think we got to get a lot better talking about these things with our family and stuff. You know what I mean? Like having open dialogue about, hey, are we prepared? And it's not one of those, oh, shut up, like type of no, this is serious. Like we can fuck around and have drinks and talk about all kinds of stuff. And we could do that, but at the end of the day, we gotta really come together and we gotta have a real conversation about what happens. All of us are gonna die at this dinner table at some point or another. What's gonna happen? You know what I mean? Because we don't want to be dealing with the state or anybody else in the event you do pass. And so we want to make sure these things are taken care of and stuff, and the kids are good and stuff. Let's see here.
Well, I mean, another thing you want to consider on that is like now that I'm in the process of setting mine up, do you, everybody thinks that, oh, I'll just leave my kids with my parents. If something happens to my wife and I simultaneously and we both don't make it, we'll just pass them off to our parents. You got to think about that too. Like what health condition are your parents in?
Yeah,
You've got aging, do you want your aging parents to take care of a bunch of 10-year-old kids? I mean, how close are they to death's door? Do they have medical conditions? Do you want them, is that the way you want them brought up? So, I mean, having, a secondary person to be able to step in and become that child or children's legal guardians. I mean, that's a conversation you and your spouse have to have. You got to think about that. Do you want it to go to your sister, your brother, or her sister, her brother? These are conversations you got to have.
Yeah, exactly. And here's another thing too, right? Because remember, now we're transferring assets. We're leaving money behind, right? Imagine leaving, you have your life insurance, your house is paid off, and the children just inherited. Now remember, this is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. Let's just say the house is paid off, and now your children just inherited a check of $500,000, but they're 16 years old. You have a 16-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Okay, could you imagine being 18 years old with no debt or anything and then just getting a check of $500,000 with no guidance?
Oh, we're gonna
Like,
wow out.
Wow, that money's gone faster than it came. You know what I mean? There's a section here where it says here, what age would you like your children to take control from the trustee of inherited assets? It starts at 18, and you could actually delegate an age where it says, okay, 25 years old is when my children, they could actually take their share of the pie at 25 years old. I'm not going to leave, like, my children each get in my life insurance policy, they're both millionaires. You know what I mean? And then plus all the other assets and everything that's going to come around, right? But here's the thing though. I'm not going to leave that to an 18-year-old.
No,
That's not going to happen.
That's not financially responsible.
Exactly. It's like giving them a freaking Lamborghini at 18 years old. You know what I mean? It's not going to happen. I still think 25 years old is still too young, but 25 years old with guidance, I'm hoping to live a long life. Obviously, you know what I mean? I want to be there for my children's children. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping that, like if I'm alive, 25 would be great with mentorship and guidance. You know what I mean? But let's say, I think that, okay, at 25, I'm praying that the money they receive, they'll be smart enough at 25 than they were at 18. I know they're going to be a lot wiser at 25 than they were at 18,
Yeah.
when it comes to money, And so I want to make sure that at 25, that's the time that I've set up for them to inherit their money and take control over
now,
that.
how detailed can you get with that? Can you say, I want them to have, $20,000 at age 25, and then, like the remaining portion of that money they get when they're married, or, if they're 19, they can have access to X amount of thousands of dollars as long as they're going to college or, getting into a trade school or something to that,
Yes, you
like
could actually set it up where
they've
it
got to hit
comes.
like a mark before those funds
Yeah.
release.
So you could say like at 18 years old, I'm going to give them 200,000 for college. That could be for school and boarding or whatever, right? Or 100,000, whatever it is. So remember, this is all in a trust now. So now that money now is going to start getting delegated out. However, you have it set up, So when they're this age, they get this much. When they're this age, they get this much. This way, like I said, imagine giving an 18-year-old $1 million with no debt. That's like financial suicide. Because remember, well,
It's a
it's
recipe
not.
for disaster.
Yeah, it's not just giving $1 million. It's $1 million without the financial guidance. That's the big key right there. Without the financial guidance, they're gonna go freaking to them. They hit the lottery and they think it's gonna last forever, and it's not. They'll probably end up going bankrupt, losing the house and everything you've built. So you could push it out in small increments if you choose to, and that's big. That's actually a very big thing that you could do. Let's see here. Please check. Let me see. You want assets to pass to my spouse and children as follows. Oh, and you could even divide it up where you say, okay, I want this to go to my spouse. This money's for my children. I don't want 100% to go to my spouse. I want, to make sure, okay, look at this was already designed for their college because I didn't make it in time. This goes to the children just by themselves. And now it goes into their account. That's their property. No one else could take that. It goes into their individual name, their social security, all that stuff. You see, so that becomes their property. So yeah, there's a lot of things to go over. This is like a 6-page questionnaire here.
Dang.
Yeah, it's 6 pages.
Pretty thorough.
That's why I give people a week to review it, and I go in, but review it with your wife. Don't review it on your own. Really have a real conversation when you're laying in bed at night. The children are gone and everything like that. They're asleep, and it's just you two, and you're talking. Have a real conversation about these things, and be, like I said, be very thorough about this. And once you've had that conversation, then call those people that you want to be in charge, or that person that you want to be in charge of these things, and ask them. In this, I know you don't want to hear it, but we're setting these things up. In the event this happens, would you be okay taking care of our children? Would you be okay with this? And it's a serious thing, because remember, you can't, once you get them, you can't just send them back to this. You could send them back to the state, but you're going to do some damage to those children mentally.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't want to do that. So
yes, I mean, just thinking about those things, and the more detailed you are on that essentially inventory list, the more detailed you are, the less you leave up to chance, the less you leave up to the state, your local government and all that stuff.
yeah, exactly. And the good thing is remember, we talked about when should we set these up? Set it up as young as possible, because the cool thing is that as you hit milestones, you had a child, you've built a business, you bought a house, you've done all these things. All you're doing is just adding it into your will. That's it. You're just adding. Like you're like I said, we have to go back and take inventory, because we've never taken inventory, because we're older now. We've done all these things already, right? But for the person that's just starting off at a young age, that's the perfect time, because as they're going through life, they're like, okay, I did this. I'm going to put that in. I just forward this to the attorneys, and that's it. They just keep, it's like the easiest way to keep inventory of your life, and then when you die, your family, whoever your beneficiaries are, they're like, Jesus Christ, this guy had freaking everything. Like everything was in order. Like all of a sudden you died, and it was like the most smoothest process. Like all we had to do was grieve. That was it. We just had to grieve. And every time we were grieving, another check kept coming in, and another check kept coming in. And so this guy just left everything. Like that's how things are supposed to be set up. You want to make sure that, in life, you're shooting for financial independence for yourself, but God forbid, if you fall short, you're creating generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. You're creating, whether you have children or not, you want to make sure that you put a value to your life. When you die, you're leaving something to the next generation, because whether you have children or not, your siblings are going to have children. There's going to be an offspring. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure we're doing that, leaving the family better off financially. Eventually someone has to break that curse in the family. You know what I mean? I'm grateful that I learned this stuff at a young age. I wish I would have learned it sooner, but I'm grateful I did learn it in my 20s, in my late 20s, so I could start doing it. But yeah, man, I was the one for my family that had to break that cycle. You know what I mean?
It almost seems like it skipped a generation, because like I remember my grandparents, when they passed, like they had everything laid out, like the wills, the trusts, all the estate planning, everything was done. Burial was already prepaid. Like everything was like done. All you had to do was grieve when they passed. Now my parents, I don't think anybody in their generation really did the wills and the trust.
Uh,
And like,
I
because I
think the
know when my mom passed, like she had none of that stuff. So we had to
yeah.
go through and take care of it. My stepdad had to jump through a bunch of hoops, because you weren't listed on this account. Like, oh, but I'm like her surviving spouse. Like, here's a death certificate. No, we need this, that, and the other. So it was like a real pain in the ass, and it took a long time to wrap
Mhm.
everything up. Now, I mean, compound that on the fact that you just lost your spouse. You're not in the right mental state anyway. So I mean, it just
Mhm.
makes life even harder. It's like almost like going through a freaking divorce.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's chaotic, you know what I mean? And I think for to answer that question, because it's funny because when my grandfather died, with the exception of the life insurance, which he was ripped off on, right? That's why Colonial Life, I hate that company. Yeah, I hate that company. But anyways, with the exception of that, everything else was smooth. Like he was buried at the Riverside National Cemetery here. But he took care of all that stuff. He already had his plot. Everything was already like in order, and the accounts and everything were shifted over to me. Like I was his only beneficiary of all this. So it was just like a smooth process, like everything went in. But with my parents' generation, I think it has to do with the baby boomer generation. The baby boomer generation, I feel like fucked everything up. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like really did, because they were that culture that they, that culture that they created, and that like that weird like hippie phase, like kind of like culture in the 70s and 60s. That right there, I think that they've neglected a lot of the early on responsibilities that you do. I'm talking generally. I don't want someone that's going to listen to you as a baby boomer like, well, that wasn't me.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we're just generally
In general.
speaking. Yeah, the general population of the baby boomer generation really dropped the ball when it came to financial planning. You know what I mean? It was just wasn't in your guys' thing. Like it was like expected with our grandparents. When they hit adulthood, they were already looking at establishing a family, setting up a career early, and like they weren't doing bouncing from job to job. They did a career, or they built a business, or they inherited a business, whatever it was, or they whatever they did to get to the career. They had the home, they had the family, and they raised children, and they repeated the process. It was just like that. It was what we did. You know what I mean? Like you were here to procreate, basically. That's what they loved it. You know what I mean? Whereas the baby boom generation, it wasn't like that. Like the family unit wasn't as building the family unit and all that wasn't as strong. And then I mean, we can go into a rabbit hole with this, but I feel like the baby boomer generation, they were just kind of like existing in life and just like for themselves. And in the moment, they were living so much in the moment that they never planned that future.
Yeah.
And then because they didn't do it, they didn't teach it to the next generation.
I was gonna say
And
it
so
never got passed down to my generation.
exactly, because they didn't do it, so they can't teach something they're not doing. You know what I mean? So I think that's the baby boomer generation. I think is the ones that are really at fault for a lot of the financial kick. And it sucks because now they're senior citizens. You know what I mean? They're all senior citizens, and a lot of they don't have any of this stuff set up. You know what I mean? It's like they're senior citizens, and then they just woke up one day and are like, "Holy shit!" Like I'm fucked. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, where did my life go? You know what I mean? Like where did it go? Like I'm not ready for retirement. I'm not. I can't even die right now. You know what I
Can't
mean?
afford to
Like
die.
I can't even afford to die. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing I teach about, where I say, start your investments early, because if not, you'll run into what I call the second fear in life, which is the fear of living too long, which means you're at your retirement age. You're at the end of the road where you have more past than future, and you're looking at your money and you're saying, Jesus Christ, like I gotta pray to God I die before my money dies. You know what I mean? Because I don't have enough right now to last my entire life. And and it's sad. You're seeing senior citizens now eating freaking cat food because they can't afford, like food. You know what I mean? Because of inflation. You know?
Yeah, it's like so another good thing, and I know we can't get too far into it, but like setting up a trust. I was just learned the other day you can if you set up a trust, like once you hit 65, you're eligible for Medicaid and all that stuff. If you have everything set up in a trust, you legally no longer have any assets as long as you set it up that way. But then you can apply for Medicare, and then you can actually get into like a nursing home or something like that because your Medicare is going to pay for 100% of that. However,
Yeah.
if you have assets, you have to sell all those assets or turn those assets over to the government before they'll put you in a home. But if you set
Yeah.
everything up in a trust, you're just managing that trust. You don't actually own any property or assets. The trust does. So
Yeah.
as long as you have all that stuff in there for 5 years prior to going through the Medicaid route, then you're scot free.
Yeah. And there's so many different loopholes that a lot of people were not aware of, because we're not taught the information, And so yeah, man, it's a lot to go over, man. But that's what I say. The best thing to do is just start as soon as possible. Start your financial journey as soon as possible because, like I said, the sooner you do it, the less it's going to cost you, and the more you're going to end up at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
That's literally the moral of the story. That's it.
Yeah. I appreciate you coming back on the show and kind of enlightening the listeners on getting their act together, getting everything set up, being a responsible adult, and having protecting your assets, building your assets up, but also protecting them.
Definitely. Yeah, and if anybody needs any questions or has any questions, like I said, I appreciate you letting me do this because I built a lot of clients actually from just doing this podcast with you, and I appreciate you giving me the exposure. And it's funny because I thought I was going to get only people from Florida. You got a reach across all 50 states. I just realized
it's actually global, man. I get a report every week, and it shows like all the different, not only just the states, but all the different countries. Like I got listeners all over the place. It's actually pretty cool when you think about it.
Yeah, and as I said, I appreciate you, letting me talk on here and giving me a lot of exposure and everything. But yeah, if anybody has questions, you can feel free to message me on Instagram. It's at Mr._Roybal, ROYBAL, or you could just call me directly or shoot me a text. A lot of your listeners, they were texting me. It's 909-434-4567. Definitely be able to answer all your questions and anything. If you want to go into more detail about anything we just talked about.
Yeah, it kind of it makes sense because like I reached out to you not behalf of doing the podcast, and you kind of got me on this path, and I was like, well, damn, if here I am, I've been in the welding industry for 25 years, how many other welders are in the similar situation? Like they should have access to this information as well. So that I was like, dude, like come on the podcast, let's talk about this. And then we were talking about setting up wills and trusts, and we were talking probably 2 weeks ago, and I was like, hey, again, like let me get you back on the show and like share this information with the listeners because it's good stuff, and they're not going to learn it anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's free information.
Yeah.
Free education never hurt anybody.
No, it's just a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Man, once again, thanks again for your time, opportunity, and coming out here and kind of educating the listeners on getting wills set up and kind of covering their assets.
You're welcome, bro. You're welcome.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Arc Junkies podcast. I hope you found the discussion informative and helpful. Remember, you've built your assets and your empire. Don't let someone else keep it out of your family's hands when you're gone. Don't forget to check out the website, arcjunkies.com, for more information and resources on welding. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Arc Junkies Podcast for updates on upcoming episodes and special offers from our sponsors. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with more information and insights on all things welding. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.